How's it going, everybody? And welcome to episode 249 of Master My Garden podcast. As we head for the end of October now, we're going to look at the subject of Bareroot planting with the Bareroot season coming up. And I'm delighted to be joined this week by Katrina and Robert for Cullen Nurseries in Carlow. And we're going to chat about all things Bareroot. As we know, Bareroot season is a great time of the year to plant trees, shrubs, hedging, roses, and so on. And it's the time of year where people consider what sort of hedge they're going to put in, what kind of trees we're going to put in. And, you think about it a lot at this time of the year, and it is the best time of the year. If you're doing a long run of hedges, particularly, it's the most economical way of doing big runs of hedging. Obviously, you can plant hedges at all times of the year, but this is the time where a lot of sort of long runs and big hedging jobs and planting jobs get done. So I'm delighted to be joined by Katrina and Robert for Cullen Nurseries, and Cullen Nurseries are a family business based in Carlow. And to tell us all about Bareroot and what they do down there. As I say, Katrina and Robert, you're very, very welcome to Master My Garden podcast.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Katrina, it's and Robert, it's a family nursery. You're based down in Hackettstown in Carlow, and Robert, I believe you're the guy that got it going. You were originally the green fingered partner in the group. So tell us a little bit about the history of Cullen Nurseries and how it came to be first, I suppose.
To be honest, first of all, it probably came from my father, who probably from a very early age started working in the nursery in Wicklow. At the time, they were growing a lot of forestry trees, being planted right through the country, and probably in the late 50s, early 60s, they were actually exporting at that time as well to Scotland and England. So anyway, that progressed along. When I was younger, I was hanging out no matter where he went, and he would be doing gardens, and he'd be doing garden maintenance, landscaping, putting in lawns, doing all that sort of thing. And as I say, from probably when I was as far back as when I was able to walk, I was with him. Then I'd done a stint up in Multi-Farnham, in the agriculture and horticultural college.
Yeah.
Came back then, and I kind of just started up myself. We were doing landscape and maintenance. We were growing shrubs, growing bedding plants, with the help of my mother and father. And it progressed from there. In 2010, then, myself and Katrina bought here in Ballasalla in Hackettstown, where the nursery is today. So we bought 11.5 acres here, and it has just grown now, to be fair. As was at the start, native trees probably 10, 15 years ago, they weren't the thing. But then, look at it, to be fair now, the talk is native trees, and it's just got around people in their heads that they need to just keep plant native. Even though, look at, to be fair, a beech tree is not native, but beech has been grown here for hundreds of years. That's just one typical example of it. But look at, we have progressed over time. It doesn't just happen like what we're planting today or what we're growing today. It could be you're looking 3 years down the line.
Yeah.
For a plant that's saleable to a person.
Yeah, it takes time. It takes time. If you're at it since involved in it for that length of time, you must have seen some transition from, back in those early days because gardening really kicked off here in I suppose the 80s, didn't it? Prior to that, it was a little bit here and there, but it wasn't much. It was really at that stage that gardening started to kick off.
Gardening was probably Leylandii in the 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah. Look at everyone at that time. Leylandii, we grew Leylandii. We grew hundreds of thousands. Right? Yeah. And you'd nearly be ashamed to say that now.
Yeah.
And most of them now are being actually cut out of it. But at that time, all people wanted was get the Leylandii hedge, no matter what site they had, get the Leylandii hedge in, get it up, and that was it.
Yeah. No, I remember myself, and I would have done a lot of planting of Leylandii at that time. And it's funny, I when I was covering an episode last year on hedging, I was questioning, one or two hedges that we're currently planting. And if you look at it at that time, everybody, and I mean everybody, even the garden writers, Jerry Daly's of this world, were talking about Leylandiis. And So everybody was putting it in, and as you rightly said, they're gone everywhere now, thank God.
Yeah.
But you know that there is kind of phases, and it does look like, to be fair, a lot of the hedging that's going now is going to be more longer term, more beneficial. Um, you would also wonder that, and this is where I was going, like Portuguese laurel is huge at the moment. I find it a brilliant hedge. I'm sure you guys grow it.
We do.
And hopefully, fingers crossed, nothing comes, you know, down the line in time that affects that, because that seems to be the thing, you know, when something is really in vogue and in fashion, and then something comes along to knock it in its tracks a little bit. So hopefully we don't see things like that in the future. But definitely the type of plants that we're generally seeing now seem to be a more resilient, longer term option, I would say.
I think as well that people are starting to look for a low maintenance
Yeah.
type of a hedging, because like traditionally in the 80s, I suppose there wasn't such an emphasis on gardens, but I think especially during the pandemic, when your garden became your only outside space and your
Yeah.
sanctuary and your haven, I think people really focused then on having a nice, well-maintained garden that was adding an extra room to the house, basically.
Yeah.
So as Robert was saying, like the business has grown in the last couple of years and it has taken time, but the massive shift to online sales really propelled our business as well. And we never thought that we'd be selling trees and hedging online. Never thought that that would be happening. So we actually, throughout the process of COVID, made the decision to close the nursery to the public and focus just on and taking that pain point out of people's lives as well. Like who wants to spend their Saturday coming down looking at trees and hedging when we can send them pictures and videos and show them what is here and lift that plant when it's ready and deliver it straight to their door. So there's been lots of factors, but I do think low maintenance and easily maintained is definitely a factor for people who have got back out now. And while the garden is so terribly important, and we love our garden as well, to be able to bring a beautiful space but low maintenance has been very crucial for people in the last few years. So that could be a reason that Portuguese laurel is such in demand.
Yeah, for sure. Because I have an old booklet here that came out of a paper, and it's from the 80s. And I was reading it recently, and it has the best hedging options for your garden. And I've referenced it several times before, but it's a funny one because it's has all the usual ones from that time. Leylandii is on it. You know, there's a small bit of beech. There's no Portuguese laurel on it. You have privet, the green and the yellow privet and all that. But one of the factors, they had like a chart going across, and one of the factors that they had of why you'd choose it was number of cuts per year. And obviously that's a number of cuts to keep them looking in the box shape that everyone considers a hedge needs to be. But some of them were 4 cuts a year, on the likes of the privet was 3 cuts a year, I think. But I don't know. In this day and age, nobody has time to be giving their hedge 4 cuts a year, particularly if it's a big hedge.
Well, we have all the tools and the equipment, and we don't have time to do it 3 or 4 times a year. And the know-how.
So seeing as we're on hedging and it's coming to that time of the year, we've obviously mentioned Portuguese laurel, but what do you perceive to be the best hedging these days? And there's various types, and I know it depends on the area, it depends on what the customer is looking for in their garden and so on. But what do you think is the best types of hedging these days?
I suppose beech is a lovely hedge. I like beech. Now everyone likes beech for the reason that it loses its leaves. But if a beech hedge is kept well and not let too wide, it'll actually hold an awful lot of leaves during the winter time.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, and it's going to hold them tight right into the stem.
Yeah.
So, and I'd always tell people, maybe if you can, try and trim your hedge, say your beech hedge in August, end of August, early September. And it'll throw back a little flush of growth, not an awful lot, but that flush of growth will actually keep its leaves nearly the whole year round. Obviously, it's going to lose the leaves for a couple of weeks in May before the fresh flush. But now you can mention that to some people, and straight away with the beech, they just don't like it because it loses leaves. So then your evergreen hedge, and then you're kind of going back. Okay, the same thing again. Laurel could end up being the Leylandii. It's a massive seller, to be fair, at the moment. Takes a lot of boxes, evergreen, fast growing. Can get a bit, if it's not kept trimmed, needs to be trimmed a couple of times a year.
Yeah.
To be fair,
Yeah. Beech is a funny one because it's probably my favorite hedge as well. It's what I have around the house. I do have some other hedges inside in it, but the main perimeter is beech, and
Yeah.
I find it a great hedge. And it really only is 3 or 4 weeks where it's pushing out the new leaf that it looks horrible, and it does look horrible at that time, but it is only a very, very short window before the new leaves burst out and it pushes off the old leaf. That's the only time of the year that it doesn't look like a nice hedge. I think for the rest of the year, it's a fantastic looking hedge.
Especially in the autumn time as well. It's colors, unbelievable.
We have it all the way around our house, and then we have a laneway that's, I'd say there's probably about 100 meters of the hedge, then kind of curving up a laneway. But what we did now, whether it was intentional or not on Rob's behalf, I don't know, but we've pockets of copper. So you'd have a run of green and then say 4 copper together, and just that contrast in summer is gorgeous as well.
Yeah,
we have a bit
I
of
wouldn't be
everything.
mad about the copper mixed in with.
Oh, I think it's lovely.
I'd rather just, when I'm planting hedging, just keep it all the same.
Yeah.
Because there's so much.
Definitely, I would like that, and not in all scenarios, but I think it's lovely. There's a stud farm up near Clane in County Kildare, and they have it along the road, and it's green.
I know that stud farm. It's fabulous.
Yeah, it's fabulous. But I suppose what people have done in the past is they might have gone with, 4 meters of green, 1 meter of purple. But what ends up happening is that the green is a bit too dominant, and it sort of pushes it out, and you end up with that. With that 1 meter, you only end up with a small little window. Whereas I think in the block that you say, Katrina, it does look impressive enough.
Yeah. It's actually on a curve around part of the. But then we have a bit of everything in the garden.
Yeah,
we've Portuguese and we've privet and we've a bit of laurel, and they all serve a purpose.
Yeah, for
They're
sure.
all put in for a particular reason.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the others. So obviously Portuguese laurel is probably the one that's most, I suppose, in vogue at the moment. Everybody seems to be planting it. It's in high demand. It's a lovely hedge, really easy to maintain, evergreen. It has a lot going for it at the moment. Would you see it as being one of the most popular at the moment?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a few years ago, we grew very little Portuguese laurel. Actually, probably I'd say
the last 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years it has really taken off.
Yeah.
And even around here now, maybe a few years ago, people had asked you about Portuguese hedge, and maybe we started growing the Portuguese, and you'd be actually trying to think, where is there nice Portuguese hedges? You could tell them to go look at and see what you hear. And there was actually none at the time.
Yeah.
So look, it really has came into itself now, to be fair. There's there's an elegance or something about it.
Yeah.
It has that dark green is classy looking. The smaller leaf as well. It looks tidier when it's cut, and I suppose it is hardy as well. And the one thing I find with it is that it actually fills out quite quickly. So you're not waiting for a huge amount of time for it. If you put in a reasonable sized plant, give it 2 or 3 years, and you'll be starting to form a good hedge at that stage. So it's quite quick, which I think is a big plus for it as well.
Yeah, another plant that's really starting to take off for us, we have a Carre Rouge red robin, and that's doing really, really well because it's that darker green leaf. It's an awful lot more dense and compact, say, than the Photinia, and a really nice blood red colour. And anybody who comes to the nursery with the intention of an evergreen hedge, as long as their site is right and it's not too windy, that's what they're going home with. That's what they're looking for. It's a really nice hedge as well. I actually put a few of them in the garden just to let them up as shrubs.
Yeah, and what is that now again?
It's a Carre Rouge. It's a Photinia Carre Rouge.
Right, because on one of my hates in terms of hedges, and I've said it on the podcast before, is the Photinia red robin, the loose hedge. I think as a hedge, people see the red and they think, "Oh, this is gorgeous," but as a hedge, I don't think it's a good hedge because it's gappy at the bottom. If you are going to maintain it as a hedge, you're typically cutting it, and you never really get to see the red except on the top tips. So I always find that it's a hedge I never like, but that sounds like a good one, and I wasn't aware of it actually.
It's actually
It's new enough,
it's grown as a more compact hedge.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a lovely hedge.
So if you had, fair enough, now look at it, it's not a boundary hedge, I would say, but if you were trying to maybe square off little areas, your garden, or maybe different things like that, it's actually a lovely hedge.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but it is more compact than the Fraserite.
And much denser
normal
even
one.
from the bottom. Now,
Yeah, it's a nicer
it's
plant.
trickier to grow. It takes that little bit of time.
Yeah.
And even when we have it in the tunnels, there's an awful lot more cutting back on it. It takes a spell outside for them to harden off to get that woody strength in the stems of it. But once you have it up, and like there's a couple of pictures, and we're on TikTok and all of those things, and they're TikTok, it's there, and it's on the website as well. But it's an absolutely lovely, and the red is a real,
unbelievable.
it's a beautiful dark red.
It's more of a
Yeah.
maybe a
Purple, yeah,
purple
purple
plum,
color. That is proven
Yeah.
very, very popular with people. And now people do ring looking for Photinia, and we have a small amount of Photinia, but we are certainly starting to move away from it to the Carre Rouge because it does take an awful lot more boxes. But I know of a guy who has a Photinia hedge locally. Now,
it's lovely.
and it's lovely, but he does mind it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
feeds it. It's got the green net. He only took the green net down about this year, and I'd say it's up 5 years. He clips it well. He keeps it very, very well. So when it is done well, and he has maintained that bushiness at the bottom as well, he does mind it, and it is a lovely hedge. It's to the front.
It's only maybe 4 foot high, and I think that's the reason that's staying nice and bushy.
Yeah, and I think if what you're saying there, if the person is patient after they've planted and they're willing to keep it really short for a while to allow it to fill at the base, then potentially it could turn into a good hedge. But typically when you see it around the country, it's tall, it's gappy at the bottom.
Sparse.
Yeah,
it does get sparse.
Yeah, I don't like it typically as a hedge, but it could be good if somebody was willing to invest the time in it and the care into it.
And we've had lots of people who've come back to us looking for laurels to plant under a red robin hedge to fill that.
Yeah,
right.
That's so great.
And it's very hard to try and tell them that's not going to work. But
you mentioned cherry laurel or ordinary laurel, so yeah, that's a bit of a tricky one. It's still a great hedge, but there is in certain circles, a bit of a move away from it as well. It's particularly in the UK, it's seen a little bit as the Leylandii of the day, I guess. Because it does have that tendency to take over, particularly if it's planted, in front of another hedge, or if there's something off it. But if it's kept trimmed and it's kept, tidy on both sides, then you can keep on top of it, and it still is a good hedge. But if it
is a good hedge, it just needs manners kept on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
And that's
And what other hedging are you seeing that's really good that people could be considering for their gardens?
Massive push to native. I think there's an awful lot of planting permissions being granted now where they're asking people to plant native indigenous plants, and they're not giving you a list, say like the acre scheme is giving you a list, but it's definitely telling you to move more so to what's currently growing native in your area.
Yeah.
Massive push. We do like a native hedging pack on the website, and it's honestly one of the best sellers. Like it's literally 100 plants in a pack, but you'd find into built up areas like big into Dublin, people are bringing in and trying to put a bit of flowering and something for the bees and the birds into their garden, and that is a really good seller with us now. So included in that, you've got a bit of whitethorn, spindle, hazel, guelder rose. Rosa rugosa is starting to make a little bit of a comeback as well for the flowering properties. Rosa canina as well, and blackthorn. Wouldn't be 100% a fan of blackthorn because it spreads so much. And so many farmers I've had a conversation with in the last 12 months, because it's on the acres list, and they're saying, I don't want that. I spent years cutting that back in the ditch. I don't want it. But native hedging, like the trees 5-10 years ago, native hedging is becoming so incredibly popular in small spaces as well. And people just wanting to bring that bit of colour and that bit of fruiting as well. There's a beautiful job that we did down near Loughlin Bridge where they put in guelder rose in a double row, and they put a bark mulch base on it. We went back to check it this time last year, and it had turned that beautiful red colour, and it was just abundant with the berries.
Red berries.
And it kind of, the back of it was so obviously you have the contrast of bark mulch, but then the back of it was kind of like a panelled wall as well there, and it had a dark paint stain on it. It was just gorgeous. Really gorgeous.
Rosa rugosa is fantastic, and that mix is really popular. I planted it around, I have a tunnel out the back, and I planted it around the site basically at the end of that. So the beech frames one half of it, and then this hedge has gone in the last couple of years, and now it's only there 2 years, but it is doing really well. And in time, it'll be full of color, and you can see the rows of rugosa with the color at this time of the year, and the hips on it is really nice. The only thing with them, and I can understand why people are buying it, obviously it's on your planning permission in a lot of cases, and as you said, people in cities are looking to bring some sort of biodiversity into their gardens, which has been, I suppose, typically not easy to do. You do need to maintain them slightly differently. You know, it's not going to, if you keep them trimmed into the normal tight shape, you're never going to see the full beauty of it.
No,
true.
You kind of need to let them come out a bit, don't you?
Yeah, because you're going to have different growth patterns. Like you'll have a spindle maybe growing higher than a white thorn, or then there's a gilder rose maybe won't grow as quick as something else. But you say it's an informal hedge, perfect.
Yeah.
You know,
perfect.
just let it do its own thing.
Yeah.
Like look at, if you keep them clipped back, don't go mental on them. Maybe after flowering or something, or after burying or something, and look, it'd be fabulous now, to be fair. Like we've even had people only planted maybe even 5 meters of it in a city house or a city, you know, and seeing them then you might be passing maybe in a year or two assignment, just are lovely now, to be fair.
We did a job out in Knockananna, just across the border in Wicklow, and they got a bit of funding to do a sensory garden. And then they had like a grass patch that they put a tunnel on, and they did a border of native hedging. And through that, we put a few mountain ash trees, a few prunisavium, and there was a few tilia in it as well.
Yeah, just for good for the bees.
Yeah, and I think we put a bit of privet into it as well, because the flowers for the bees as well. And to go back to that during the summer, it's just lovely. It's just lovely. And they
even to see the different heights, it just looks well.
It just all complements each other.
Yeah,
because you have various levels of interest in it then, and it's
rather than just looking at your straight hedge of Portuguese or your beech or whatever, you know.
You mentioned earlier on about short growing hedges, and obviously bucks is probably still the most popular, I would say. People a little bit wary of it at times, but I think if it's treated properly, it's still a great hedge and you won't have any issues with it. What are you guys finding is good in short growing hedges, you know, for framing flower beds or whatever?
Yeah, the box is good, and I always like people, they'll talk about box blight and that. And to be fair, any of those things, I think if they're really well looked after, really well fed, and they're able to beat anything that comes on them. It's no different than a human or an animal or anything. If they're looked after properly, and they'll definitely they'll outgrow any diseases that come to hit them. Now that's my personal thing on it.
Yeah, I'm delighted you said that, because that's something that I've said I don't know how many times over the last couple of years. Like a healthy plant typically will fight off 90% of what comes its way, within reason. And you know, when you see these pictures online of buxus blight, it's typically something that's completely neglected, or you know, it's a buxus cone or a ball at a front door that hasn't got water or feed in 6 months, and it's sitting under an eave, and people are wondering why it's dead. Well, it
gets water when it's dead.
When it's dead,
and it might have died because of buxus blight in the end, but it was seriously stressed before it got it, and I think that is hugely important. That you know, healthy grown, strong grown plants rarely pick up anything like that. So
exactly, I'm a firm believer now in that myself.
No, 100%.
And there is treatments out there. There is treatments, and to be honest with you, if anyone comes looking for buxus, I would always send a link or a text message back to say, make sure you treat it. You can get it in your local hardware store. This is what it looks like.
But to be fair, the best treatment is feed.
Yeah.
And like the chicken pellet,
chicken manure pellets.
Chicken manure pellets, I think they're very good. Organic, they're clean. Throw them on top of the ground. Let the water wash the nutrients down to the roots, and it ticks a lot of boxes as well. To be fair.
Anything else in really short growing hedges? You obviously mentioned the red robin alternative earlier, which can be kept short. Anything else that you?
Carre Rouge. So the box Carre Rouge. People I know very fast growing, but even for the people will actually use privet.
Yeah.
Now, same thing what we were talking about earlier, probably actually does need the 4 clippings a year.
Yeah.
But the only thing about it, and you hear with people, if they do clip it, keep them nice and short. You pick it up with a lawnmower or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
So there's a unanimous microphyllis. We don't do much of it at the moment, but it is starting to begin to get popular.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
small little leaf.
yeah, that's a nice one. I've never planted it or grown it myself, but yeah, it does look nice. Not as nice as Buxus when it's tidy, but it still looks decent. It frames a bed quite well, but
That's right.
there's one Leylandii, which I don't know if you guys grow that. It's one it can be kept very like a Buxus, maybe.
Yeah.
It wouldn't want to be kept much lower than sort of 2 foot. But that one is quite good, but it's definitely gone old fashioned. People consider it to be old fashioned.
But I think might have been grown in a lot of houses, maybe back through the years, wasn't it?
Back through the years, yeah. But Natita, that particular one it's so easy to keep it small. It does need a few cuts a year as well, but it's where I like it, it's very tough. It'll grow where most other things won't grow, which is kind of good. So that's a good option. Any other hedges? Obviously, we've spoken about the native, we spoke about beech, laurel, Portuguese laurel. Any other hedges that you guys are doing?
We do a bit of elegance. So we'd always have people, obviously we do with Leylandii as well, but we'd always have somebody who's looking for a little bit something different along the coast. So elegance would certainly fit that bill. We wouldn't do massive numbers of it because it is kind of niche, I suppose, and we were growing that in pots, whereas the Leylandii you can line out and grow it on as a Bareroot plant. That was good. We did Escalonia for a while, but I kind of moved away from Escalonia. Just wasn't the demand.
Yeah, it's gone out of fashion. Definitely got out of fashion.
Yeah.
But it is a great plant as well.
Yeah.
Lovely plants. Holly hedge.
Yeah.
They're starting to get popular as well. They're nice, little bit thorny, but
little bit slow.
Little bit slow. But it's amazing. Holly could actually sit in the ground for 2 years, and then all of a sudden, then it'll just shoot.
Yeah, we've a crop of root ball hollies out there, and for a long time we were walking past them.
Yeah.
And I went out just measuring there as we were starting to do the pricing for the Bareroot season. And there's plants in 5 and 6 feet tall, and they're absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, it's amazing. Sometimes the hollies, if you can keep the weeds, keep them ahead of the weeds when they're small. And it's just after 2 or 3 years, then they will just start throwing up. They'll just start throwing up growth, and you could see fresh growth, maybe 12, 14 inches on fresh growth after maybe 3, 4, 5 years,
Yeah, it's a classy plant. When it's in a full hedge, it's very classy. Yeah, really nice. It takes a little bit of time to get there, all right, but it is really nice. Another similar one, Taxus baccata is another good one.
We have a bit of Irish yew in the ground. It went into, I don't know why we had it. We got it in for something, and we lined it out very slow as well, obviously. But
the viaduct.
Yeah, Bars, wasn't it? Yeah, we did the viaduct, planted the viaduct in Bars. But actually sold a few of them last year into somewhere up in Stormont, was it?
I think it did actually.
So it went into the government buildings in Stormont. We actually have hollies that went into the Ors and Uachtaráin earlier on in the year. We met President at the Ploughing Championships last year, and Cullen Australia is Cullen and Holly, same word. And I approached him, obviously, and he was happy to accept 3 hollies. So we sent 3 hollies to the Ors last year.
Lovely.
Delighted to know that they're growing away there.
And did you get pictures of them being planted and everything, or?
No, I didn't. To tell you the truth, John, we have 3 boys. Picture of the van. We have 3 boys. I was coming home to get one of them to a football match, I think.
I know the feeling. So, hedging, obviously, the time of year for it, but also trees. It's a great time of year to plant trees. So, you were speaking about earlier on some of the autumn colours on Rosa rugosa and so on. I passed by somewhere today that had probably 25 mountain ash, quite bushy mountain ash. They weren't that old particularly, but they were bushy, and they were all in their autumn color, and they looked absolutely class. So I'm I'm sure the likes of Mountain Ash is still very popular with you, but what other kind of native trees or what other trees are you seeing that's really popular? The acre scheme, of course, has driven a lot of planting over the last couple of years, but yeah, I'm sure you guys are seeing a lot of different.
Oak trees.
Oak is very,
Very
become
popular.
very, very popular.
Yeah.
Silver birch, very popular.
Downy birch. A lot of people looking for a mix of downy birch.
Yeah.
We'd have an awful lot of people who are looking to screen out the neighbour. And she couldn't be alder, silver birch and downy birch for screening out the neighbour. But white beam. White beam for a long time we didn't grow much of, but we've a nice few white beam in the ground now for this year. Actually seen it.
Sorbus area,
Yeah.
lovely
Yeah.
trees.
Nice tree, yeah.
Seen it.
Lovely
Yeah.
silvery leaf on it, yeah.
Yeah, seen it planted
yeah.
with Acer Crimson King locally. Now I'd say it's been
Yeah.
planted 20-25 years, but that contrast
Yeah.
is lovely in the summer. That's a popular one. Hawthorn trees,
Yeah, hawthorn trees.
an actual white thorn tree. Lots of people starting to look for that, and I'm starting to see a bit of a comeback in the Acer Campastre.
Mm-hmm.
That field maple as a tree is very, very nice. But I suppose it's nice to be able to tell people, like, there's, I think, 4 of them planted outside of the Lidl in Tullow, and they're just gorgeous. And this time of the year, they just speak for themselves. They're fantastic. So beech trees, there are always people
trees,
looking for beech, copper beech.
Yeah.
As I was saying before, like we'll talk about native. Beech is not a native, but as we were saying, it's been grown in this country for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Like there's chestnut is another one.
Yeah. We actually have a beautiful batch of sweet chestnuts out there.
Sweet chestnut, yeah, lovely tree as well.
Gorgeous tree.
Yeah, it's a great tree. Yeah.
You've a great variety of trees now, to be fair. You know?
Yeah. And when people think about biodiversity, they think of hedges and they think of wildflower meadows and so on. But a tree, especially a mature tree, is one of the best things for bees and pollinators, to be fair. And people sort of overlook it a little bit. But you know, a fully grown horse chestnut, you won't see them, but there could be thousands of bees around that because they're so far up. But you know, trees have a huge place in you know.
I even see just here in the nursery now we've 2 big sycamores, and in the summer's evening the noise of bees in them is unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever they're getting out of the leaves, whether it's a wax or something, but it's unreal.
We planted oak trees for each of the kids when they were born, and we planted one common oak and then 2 red oaks because they're just the colour. I love them.
Yeah.
But an oak tree, I think, is 326 life forms it supports. Oak trees are big going oak trees in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's huge. What size are the red oaks now?
You're better on size.
Oh, but you see, the lads are 10, 12 and 14. So yeah, you know what? You'll be talking about an oak tree being slow.
Yeah.
The youngest oak tree is planted 10-year-old, probably was only maybe 3 or 4-year-old when we planted it. And I'd say it's hitting 20 foot high.
Yeah, it's overtaking the other two.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So has the youngest child.
So I have a red oak out the front, and it would be my favorite tree for autumn color. I just love the size. The size of the leaf is just very impressive, and the color is very impressive. Now it's planted about 4 or 5 years now. The only thing about it, it doesn't hold that color for very long at all. And last weekend they got whipped off on Sunday.
Yeah, the wind.
Yeah, anything that was there.
Ours is actually, you can see, obviously, I drive past it every day, and every day I drive in from the school run, it looks that little bit redder every single day. Now, it realistically is only a week.
Yeah.
Is it a week, 10 days? Maybe you're going to get that color, but it's worth the wait. Like it's
it's fantastic. Yeah, that about 2 weeks ago, it was just a full red from top to bottom. But then they all got blown off last weekend. So
because if you got a proper autumn, they really show their colours then.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic tree.
Yeah.
So of the trees that you grow, then it sounds like the vast majority are native, or they have been grown here for a long time, or that sort of thing. There's after been a huge uptake over the last couple of years, obviously, with acres and previously reps. I'm sure that has helped your business, but it's also great for, generally speaking, around the countryside for biodiversity and so on. Yeah,
in fairness, Robert was growing native trees years ago, and I suppose nobody
was growing them,
And we would have found through reps an awful lot of, and gloss, we sold him an awful lot of product into the west of Ireland. And his first delivery, I remember he left one Saturday morning, he collected his dad. And they went on, and when they got to Mayo somewhere, wasn't it?
Knock, actually.
Yeah, your man was waiting on you to fry and everything, and he rang back and he was like, "After paying me and giving me a fry, we're onto something here." And those people buy trees off us every, say, 5 years, as in they were financially incentivized to plant then. But then after 5 or 6 or 7 years, people are seeing what a tree is doing to their space and their garden, and they're buying again and again and again. So all of those schemes are fantastic. First of all, for getting trees into the ground, but secondly, for awakening a respect and an enthusiasm for planting. And often we find that the farmer rings, say, 2 days before you do it. The wife is looking for something bigger for the garden. Send up something when you're coming. You know, that they haven't invested in before because they've been so busy working or whatever. But then they're seeing the benefit of it, and they're just planting every couple of years after that as well.
And probably for years, farmers were told make fields bigger, pull out trees, pull out hedges, and now it has gone completely turned around. I've often seen back, especially we'll just say for the reps, actually that was probably one of the first schemes where they start bringing in hedges and trees. And we used to get farmers bringing up, oh, I have to plant so many meters of a hedge and all this, and that was grand. It was only they were getting paid for it. They probably would have never done it. But then they've seen then maybe give them 5 or 6 years then when the hedge gets up. Almost that looks lovely, or great shelter for stock. We'll plant more of it. And a lot of them would have done it on their own back then after as well. So things have completely, they've done a complete 360, to be fair. You know, between native planting and trees, hedgerows, the whole thing has completely changed.
Yeah, definitely. And as you say, it switches the mindset. Initially, obviously, they're getting incentivized, but then when they see the benefits, and obviously it's the benefits, as you said, in sheltering stock and so on, but they also see the benefits for nature and for biodiversity, and they see those things, and then they look to improve on that. So, and then that rolls out further, obviously, into gardens and into parks and into public spaces and all that. So yeah, it's.
But even here in the nursery, like, we have planted strategically. So like, we had a wet patch down at the bottom of the nursery, and we planted alder trees around it just to dry up the land and improve the soil quality there. Like, we have planted all around the boundaries to protect us from storms. I remember one year we had Storm Francis and Storm Ellen, and we were expecting Francis to do damage, and he didn't, but Ellen did. You know, we're constantly planting, like, leaving areas in the nursery to just let them grow wild, because as they say, a weed is just a flower in the wrong place, and that brings in pollinators, and it actually helps to reduce our dependence on pesticides. Like, we took down the tops of alder trees that had gone too big and left them there as a kind of an ecosystem for mammals and insects, and all of that pays dividends because it does increase your crop yield. Like, we plant every year, don't we?
Plant every year. What we do, sometimes we'd have trees maybe that wouldn't make it for sale, maybe a little bit crooked or something like that, to be perfect. We plant them in the ditches along, as I said, any of them winds, even last weekend there, we had that strong wind, and we grow a lot of the trees that, the young trees that we have to stake, that we were growing them to 7 or 8 or 10 foot high. And to be fair, there wouldn't be a budge out, and just as we've made shelter that way, natural shelter, you might say.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned earlier on, Katrina, about how your sustainability is quite important to you, and you won an award last year for your sustainability practices. So just tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, so we do a good bit of work with our local enterprise office, and we did this Green for Micro program. Now, my background is in quality management systems, so I would have kind of a fair handle on sustainability. And I know we grow trees, but we wanted to do it as green as possible. Now, obviously, we offered nationwide delivery service. An electric vehicle is not going to be on the cards for us for the next couple of years anyway.
You won't make it to Knock anyway.
No, wouldn't make it. Well, you might make it there, but you won't make it home. But we wanted to obviously reduce our carbon footprint, and we got an advisor in to look at what we were doing very well. And like I said, like, things that we just did because it made sense. We weren't doing it for a tick the box sustainability exercise. We were doing it because it makes sense. But when he came in, our carbon footprint, and he analysed the business and what we have already done, our carbon footprint was actually much lower than we were expecting it to be. And then from that, we were able to put little practices and improve systems and methodologies to further reduce it. And the likes of things like I love learning stuff, and I like training, and I like upskilling the whole time. Little things like we take in transition year students, we give community talks, we're involved in the creation of the biodiversity garden in Hackettstown. There's a big push on community planting and biodiversity and grants. And in fairness, there's some very, very good people in communities who are looking for grants for trees and for planting, which is great for us. Obviously, we'd love to give advice, and we've donated plants to certain things like that as well. So yes, sustainability is very, very important to us. There's, like I said, we like to grow trees, but we like to grow them as green as we possibly can as well.
Yeah, no, it's important. I think something that's a little bit, I suppose, forgotten about when it comes to horticulture as well, and this came up in the peat debate a couple of years ago, and you know, the small percentage of peat that the horticultural industry used. And I suppose when you think about it, a lot of that peat was being used to produce shrubs and trees, particularly, that are going to go into the ground for trees anything up to 50, 100 years, and they're going to lock in carbon all through that time period. And yeah, I think sometimes it's a little bit misunderstood, but when it comes to trees and things that are going to be in the ground for that length of time, I think, you know, there's benefit beyond your farm gate, let's say. So once they go off to your customer's garden and they plant their trees, they're going to continue locking in carbon there for a long period of time.
Yeah, so part of that sustainability project, we actually worked with our advisor, and so with access to a carbon calculator. So we were able to show people, like, I think it was 20 Scots pines planted over 10 years would sequester 1 ton of carbon. Like, and at the time, like the 20 Scots pines, or maybe it's the opposite way around, but they fit in your hand. They cost you 30 quid, you know, and that can sequester 1 ton of carbon. So little things like that, to be able to educate people on little steps that they can take that will, because when we think about the environment and sustainability and biodiversity, everybody thinks that they have to stop washing themselves and not use chemicals. But there's so many little things that you can do that can make a difference. Small actions that can make a difference. So it's important to us that we can educate people on that as well. And, you know, and to talk the talk and walk the walk, reduce our pesticides, reduce our fertilizer. We keep a few cattle. It's a hobby. Robert doesn't play golf and he's not a big drinker, but he loves the process of buying in cattle, feeding them on, and we turn them out to the factory. But like, we use the dung and we export that into the nursery. So, you know, we've no fertilizer.
It's a big thing actually.
It's
every
a big
year.
thing, yeah.
The dung, we spread the dung in probably before we start lining out. So we spread it out in March, plough it into the ground. That's unbelievable. The growth we're able to get. We use typically, or say, no fertilizer.
Chicken manure pellets.
Chicken manure pellets on potted plants. But in the open ground, there's nearly all dung. Lots of dung ploughed into the ground.
Yeah, you're feeding the soil rather than the plant,
exactly. And at the end of the day, it's the soil. It's paying dividends, to be fair.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's, you turn that as well, a kind of a trick learned from his dad.
Yeah.
Turning every.
We have the dung and we turn it kind of so you're composting it. I remember even back, my father years ago, he'd tell us to go up and maybe turn a heap of dung, and we'd think he just wanted to get rid of it. But look at, and that's years ago now, and like, you're going back that way again.
Yeah, it's funny you're going back that way, is right. Like, my grandparents used to live in Carlow town, right in the centre of it, and used to grow a lot of veg in there. And he used to come out to where we live, and he'd get bags of dung, bring them back into Carlow, but he used to collect the rainwater off the shed. He used to put the dung into a hessian bag and tie a lid on it and put that bag suspended in the barrel of water. And then he'd use that barrel of water to feed the cabbage plants. And like you won't get anything better in terms of feeding the soil. And yeah, it is, you know, people are starting to become aware of that as well. So it's great stuff for sure. So you're obviously getting ready for a very busy couple of weeks coming up. You'll be starting lifting, I'm sure, quite soon. Bareroot, couple of weeks.
Yeah, we're hoping to get in first week in November, but all depends on the weather.
Yeah.
We need a good couple of good nights sharp frost just to put stuff back asleep.
Yeah.
So if we lift too early, I don't like lifting plants early. Just say I'd rather if to go back into dormancy.
Yeah.
You're putting all the nutrients back into the root, and at least then you're starting with something good, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know about you guys, but up here we've only seen there was 2 heavy nights frost actually 2 weeks ago, wiped
Yeah.
out
Yeah,
all my tomatoes, and they were only
yeah.
really starting to do their best after a cold enough spring. But there hasn't been, it hasn't been that terrible cold, and even today is mild.
They were lovely.
Today it was very mild,
Yeah.
yeah.
They were
Yeah.
lovely.
And then, as we were saying earlier, there is a shift. I remember even back through the years, we could start lifting plants in mid-September.
Mm.
And it just shows you how quickly, I suppose, over space of 10 or 15 years, the way it has pushed. It was 2 years ago, I think, nothing was lifted. I think it was 20th November.
Yeah, 19th or 20th of November. Last year, I think it was the 5th.
Last year was a little bit earlier, yeah. So
Yeah.
look, we're hoping this year to get an early start, and the weather was fine.
Yeah, for sure. So in the coming weeks anyway, you'll be getting busy. You will be lifting depending on weather, but tell people where they can find Cullen Nurseries. I'll put the link in the show notes anyway, so people can find it, but just direct people to your website and so on now. And any queries, I guess, they email you. Is that kind of the...
Yeah, so WhatsApp is actually probably the quickest way to get it. So if anybody wants to text over their query to WhatsApp, 085 77 62 63 4. There's also a chatbot on the website, cullennurseries.ie. If you click on that chatbot, you get straight through to my phone. info@cullennurseries.ie for email inquiries as well. I love to talk, so people can pick up the phone and give us a call. Absolutely no problem at all. But we're on all social medias, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and not on Twitter. Well, no great interest in Twitter, but cullennurseries.ie. The WhatsApp chatbot is very, very good for people if they just want to get straight through to talk to me. I'll pick up the phone.
Yeah, brilliant. It's been a really interesting chat. Great to chat to someone who's quite close to me. And best of luck for the upcoming Bareroot season. So, Katrina and Robert, thank you very much for coming on Master My Garden podcast.
Thanks, John.
Thanks very much, John.
So that's been this week's episode. A huge thanks to Katrina and Robert for coming on. Great nursery. I've never actually been to it, but just seen what they've been doing online for the last couple of years, particularly as Katrina said, since COVID, I've seen them a lot online. And yeah, this time of the year, we always cover hedging and planting ahead of the Bareroot season. So anyone considering any type of planting, there's lots of good tips there. What's good hedges at the moment, things to look out for. And as Robert said, feeding the soil is very important for some of those trickier ones, the likes of buxus and so on. Feed your soil, keep them growing really well, and then you'll be fine. So that's been this week's episode. Thanks for listening, and until the next time, happy gardening.